Next gen is here. A lot of people have got their hands on one of these, and you've probably watched 100 different videos praising how quiet and fast it is. So I'm not gonna waste your time doing yet another video talking about it. Yes, it is indeed quiet, it is fast, and the temperatures are about what I would expect from a console with this much power. Compared to my PC that's sitting right alongside the console, I'd say the temperatures are very impressive. Instead, what I want to do with this review is address some things I haven't seen people talking about a lot, and also answer some of the questions I personally had that nobody seemed to answer. Let's start with the OS. It's the same OS that's running on the Xbox One family of consoles, but it runs a lot faster on the Series X as a result of the increased horsepower and SSD. You will get the occasional hangs though. Sometimes for no reason the OS seems to stop responding for just a second and then it picks back up. That's just the nature of software, and my PC does the same thing occasionally despite being high-end, but I figured you should know about that. And games will occasionally stutter if you have installs going on in the background, which again also happens to my PC. SSDs are awesome, but that doesn't mean you can do a bunch of stuff at the same time and expect it to maintain the same performance level. When you're playing games without anything going on in the background as you should, they run like a dream. Also, the issue where game installs would stop for no apparent reason on the Xbox One are still pretty much a thing on the Xbox Series X. I left it in rest mode downloading some of my games over the night, and when I woke up, there were 3 games that stopped installing. This isn't exclusive to rest mode, as it also happened when I had the console turned on. Now, you might be wondering, why are you downloading everything all over again when you could have just copied the games to an external hard drive and then transferred it over to the Xbox Series X internal SSD? And fine, that's a fair point when it comes to games with no Series X upgrades. But for those that do have Series X improvements, you're gonna be asked to download patches that are nearly the same size as the full game. So I figured that rather than wasting time copying things to and from an external hard drive, I would just download the games again. Dirt 5, for example, requires a 69GB patch when the actual full game optimized for Series X is a 72GB install. If your internet is low, it might be worth it doing the external hard drive transfer, but for those who are able to download a few gigabytes in just a few minutes, just download the whole thing again as it's faster. I have some very specific things to address about some of the games I play, but I'll do a separate video on some of those. For now, I'll just say there are some pretty awesome stuff and just a few minor things that bother me. If you're coming off a regular Xbox One or even an Xbox One X, you'll be very happy with how Series X performs. But if you're used to playing on a PC with an SSD, there might be a few disappointments here and there. One of the biggest improvements I noticed when it comes to how Series X run the games though, is just how much more responsive they feel. On PC, if you run your games at settings that are higher than your graphics card is able to handle comfortably, you might have a solid frame rate, but you'll notice your controller response will suffer. Lower your settings and you will immediately feel how much more responsive and light your game feels. That's how it felt to jump from Xbox One X to Series X back and forth. And keep in mind, I'm not even talking about games optimized for the new console, it's just what more horsepower does to your game. And with the low input latency technology Microsoft put into the console, there's a chance games might get even more responsive when they're built from the ground up for the Series X. That doesn't mean things will be the same throughout the entire lifespan of this generation of consoles though. I would imagine that as developers start pushing things, we might go back to heavier feeling games, but at least right now, it feels awesome to play games on Series X. That's the first time console gamers get to experience games the way PC gamers have for years now, and that to me is a huge win. 30 FPS games are still going to be a thing, and if you want 60 FPS or higher across the board, you might want to stick to PC. But I think we're at a point where the majority of games will offer a performance mode at lower resolution and graphics settings, and I like this direction game developers seem to be going for. One of the things I wanted to know that none of the reviews I watched addressed is the capture feature. Just like Xbox One X, Series X allows you to capture footage at 4K 60 FPS for longer than 30 seconds, as long as you have a dedicated USB 3.0 external hard drive plugged in. In my tests, capture footage generated on Xbox One X are encoded at a variable bit rate that seemed to hover around 14,000 kilobytes per second, which is way too low for 4K footage, especially at 60 FPS. It's enough if all you want to do is casually share your footage on YouTube, but for anything more serious, capture cards were still a must. So I was wondering if Xbox Series X would be able to bridge this gap between the built-in capture feature and dedicated capture cards. And well, I couldn't test it. I plugged in my external USB 3.0 hard drive, set it as the capture location, and started capturing 4K footage on the console. When I tried to pull up the dashboard menu to stop the recording, it simply wouldn't show up, and after a few seconds the console shuts down, which corrupts the file. You can see when it happens right now in this video, as I was also capturing the footage with my PC. After the second time it happened, I figured it just wasn't worth the risk and stopped trying. It's obviously a bug, and I hope Microsoft fixes it soon. Lastly, Xbox Series X comes with a brand new controller, and just like the built-in capture feature, I had a lot of questions no one seemed to address. There's enough minor stuff on this new controller that adds up to what I consider to be a decent enough jump over the previous one, so I want to do a separate video dedicated to that. I have some very good stuff to talk about, especially so if most of what you do is play racing games. With all of that said, is Xbox Series X worth it? It's a new console and there are some kinks to be ironed out, as is to be expected with any new piece of hardware. If you play exclusively on consoles and you're coming straight off the Xbox One or even the Xbox One X, there are enough upgrades on Series X for me to confidently say it's definitely worth it. If you're a PC gamer that somehow feels consoles suddenly got a lot closer to the PC experience and you don't want to miss out on the advancements Series X offers, just stick to PC. These advancements are nothing compared to the pace at which PC hardware upgrades move, and what you have available at your disposal right now is already superior to what Series X has to offer. The only scenario where I would recommend a Series X to a PC gamer is if you do YouTube stuff focused on multi-platform or Microsoft games and only have one PC to play and capture footage on. I don't do a lot of coverage on PC stuff because it's unreliable. Games work until they suddenly don't. Shadowplay and OBS are great for capturing footage until they suddenly aren't. It's frustrating to capture footage for a video only to find that the video came out all choppy despite the footage you captured the day before playing just fine. So if you don't want to deal with these frustrations on a regular basis, I would recommend you get a Series X and use your PC to capture footage. Anyways, that's all I have for this video. My PS5 should be coming in a week or two, so keep an eye on the channel for coverage on that. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll talk to you on the next one. Bye.